So I don't know if you're aware or if you pay attention, and maybe you don't know how much work goes into it, but we take meticulous care and we work really hard at creating the visual dynamics of seasonal decorating. We work really hard at it. Whenever our new series begins, we have a group of people, we sit down and we try to make sure there's consistency in like the images that are presented. For example, last series we talked about control, and we had clocks that were a part of the backgrounds of the screens, and we had a clock on the altar. It's that kind of thing. And our colors unite and run all the way through, that we just try to, with our decorating and with our lighting and with our visuals on the screen, we try to have a consistent theme going through. Now, I know some of you notice because we get compliments. I know some of you notice because we get complaints. And honestly, I don't care. Because if you're complaining, then you're noticing. And then that's the point. Right? The point is to take what would be an innocuous set of wood walls and a giant white wall and to make that the canvas through which we tell the story. That's the whole point, is to continue to tell the story in a variety of ways. You hear the story, God's word spoken, you hear it sung, and you can see it. This consistency of the message, which is what is so terribly important. And again, we work hard on it. We have a team that every time we have a series that we discuss what imagery we want to use, we discuss what colors, a lot goes into it. We have a whole team that works on this. But no one works harder at it, and she's kind of the rubber, where the rubber meets the road. No one makes it happen more than Diane Damas on our team. And she did all of this. Isn't it beautiful? And can we thank Diane? She does such a great job. I mean, this is magnificent. This is kind of the point where you walk in and you're like, wow, right? You get the sense of God's presence with us. So I have to say, though, that the idea for all of this was mine. As I wrote this series about being broken, I was like, I envision the entire worship space to be covered in broken mirrors. And Diane went, huh? Like, how do we do that? Right? And so I've apologized over and over for making her life miserable for the last week and a half. And I have made her life miserable for the last week and a half. So we had all of these discussions, like she thought maybe I wanted a big mirror, but no, I just want broken pieces of mirror. Well, how do I do that? How do you break a mirror and collect all the pieces? And so what I did was I took this mirror. We had a mirror that was more than 40 years old. And the corner of it is at the top of that screen. This mirror that was in our old facility, hung on the wall. It had a chunk taken out of the corner, and it wasn't so great. It had never been hung here. It's been sitting dangerously in a closet for a really long time. And it was like, well, that mirror's to the end of its life. Well, how do we break it and collect all the pieces? Well, I took it out to my acreage, and I laid down a tarp. And then, those of you who grew up on farms know that quartz bubbles up kind of comes out of the ground. So, pulled quartz out of the ground, and we decorate with those and use them. And so I took some quartz rocks, and I laid it on the tarp. And then I put the mirror over the tarp, and then I took another quartz rock and broke it. It was really kind of fun. Matter of fact, I knew it would be. The sound is amazing. So let's take a watch it. This is me breaking the mirror. Wasn't that cool? And then I loaded up all the pieces, put them in a box, and said, here you go. And now they're all here. Isn't that fun and amazing, right? It was really cool. Now, I've had several people come up to me and say, aren't you worried about 7 years bad luck? And I said, I'm not a Wiccan. No. As Christians, we don't believe in that kind of hocus pocus. So I don't believe in that. And when something bad happens to me, and it will, and when something bad happens to me 6.5 years from now, I will not, I promise you, point back to the great mirror break of 2026 as the reason something bad happened to me. That isn't how we work. That's not how we as Lutheran Christians roll. So, why broken mirrors? Why broken mirrors during Lent? Well, first of all, they're lovely, and they're absolutely gorgeous for sure. But we're talking in this series about brokenness. And how much better to have the symbols of all of the brokenness by having broken mirrors, right? We are all broken, and that's what the series is about. And we know we're broken. And the sad thing about this culture that we live in is we try to hide the fact that we're broken. We try to not show that we are broken people. And yet, for many of us, the core brokenness of who we are has a substantial influence and sway on how we go about living our lives. Our brokenness really does control us at times. And we try to pretend that we are not broken, but certainly we are. And the key, just to give you a heads up, a key in the coming weeks as we walk with Jesus to death, as we see his brokenness, is to see that we should not just be broken down, but that we should be broken open, that we should be broken and created into something new out of our brokenness, which is exactly what we see of Jesus' death and resurrection, that he was broken open into something new and better. Well, lately it seems like our culture, our society continues to point at the brokenness. We see all of the brokenness in our lives. We see it in our neighborhoods. We see it in our relationships. We see it in our communities. We see it in our cities. We see it in the world. All of this brokenness everywhere. And it's such a struggle for us. And my theory is I don't care where you are on that spectrum. I don't care if you're happy with the direction of this nation or unhappy with the direction of this nation. What bothers me is that each side points to the other saying you're the reason for the brokenness. It's all your fault, rather than seeing themselves in the brokenness. Rather than seeing that I'm a broken person and this world is broken, and that perhaps I reflect the brokenness of the world, and perhaps the world reflects the brokenness of me. Have you ever considered that? That our individual brokenness adds up to a collective brokenness that then creates the brokenness of the world? That perhaps we all contribute to the brokenness by the brokenness that we have? That's the beauty of the mirrors. Every single one of these pieces of mirror reflects you. It's either reflecting you right now or when at some point in time you could have seen yourself in one of these shards of mirrors. When I come here and I look at this mirror, I see all of you and you see all of me. Each one of us holds the brokenness of society. And our brokenness holds our image. And we are cut by what happens in the world, and we cut the world by our brokenness. That simply is how it works, which is why the image of the broken mirror is so perfect for us in these days. That you are captured by each piece of this brokenness that we have before us. Today's text is a reflection of that brokenness. I want to invite and encourage you to open to 907 in your Pew Bible, or if you're online and you have if you have your own Bible, it is Matthew 26, starting with verse 31. If you have it on your device, Matthew 26, 31, and in the house here, 907 in the Pew Bible. This text is about our collective brokenness. It's more than just about the brokenness of Peter, but it is about the brokenness of us all. It's about our human nature being broken. This is the end of the story. We begin with the end of the story of the Last Supper. Jesus has instituted the Lord's Supper, and he is gathered with his friends in what would be an amazingly sweet yet bitter meal. Here he is, having walked 3 years from place to place, leading, teaching, fellowshipping with this group of 12. And the bond that they have would be amazing. And he's with them, what he knows to be for the last time. There's a sadness in that, but even more than the sadness, the celebration would be happy because this is all coming to a head, but the sadness is that it's the last time. But for Jesus, the culmination of that sadness is even worse because he knows that they will betray him. He knows that he's going to die alone. They're all going to tank. And in this text, we see a very human part of Jesus. He just plain names it. You will all become deserters because of me this night. And then Peter, being the alpha male of the 12, basically says, though all become deserters because of you, I will never desert you. And then Jesus predicts what's going to happen. Before the end of the night, you're going to deny me 3 times. Peter even doubles down in verse 35. Even though I must die with you, I will not deny you. And a part of the text that we easily miss, because we tell the stories as Peter's story alone each year, is the second part of verse 35. And so said all the disciples. They're all in this together. We won't deny you. They all make this promise that they break. And then they head out to Gethsemane. Again, we see the very human part of Jesus. We know that he's fully God and fully human, but we see the fully human part as he gets there. He asks them to pray. He walks off taking the 3 kind of lead disciples, Peter and James and John, the sons of Zebedee. And then he gets there and he says in verse 38, and again, just part of the reason why this text works so well is it's just dripping with the emotion that Jesus has. I am deeply grieved, even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me. And of course they can't. And he comes back 3 times, again and again and again, and they're sleeping. And then after a brief scuffle, they all desert him. And then eventually Peter denies him by voice. Exactly how Jesus had predicted. Promise is broken. And as much as we hear this as just Peter's story, what we need to garner from this story is that it is a story about our human nature. That we make promises that we cannot keep. And that we are broken in terms of the promises that we make and that we cannot keep. And that is indeed the struggle. Peter's broken promises win the day. And so do ours. And I know you're going to say, well, I never make those kinds of promises. Well, yeah, you kind of do. Whenever we're here in worship and you pray the Lord's Prayer, whenever you pray the Lord's Prayer, whenever you pray the creed, you are making these promises of who you are. And yet, by our very nature, the lifestyles that we lead, whether it's how we live in terms of our time, our talent, our treasure, whether it's how we follow Jesus with our words, how we treat our neighbors, we break those promises all the time. We just never hear a cock crow. This is a story about you and me and how we all fall short. That in our brokenness, we break our promises to our God. And as disheartening as this story is for Peter, because we hear this story every single year, and every single year we hear how Peter fails. What I'm telling you is that that wasn't the end for Peter, right? He betrayed Jesus. He broke his promise. He denied even knowing him. And yet what did he do? He did exactly what Jesus said he would do. He went on and he founded the church. We are all here in part because of Peter. He became something more than his brokenness. And that's the key. Peter refused to be defined by his brokenness. And my hope and prayer for you, because we all have it. We all have this place inside of us that's dark and that's broken and that's hurt, is that you won't be defined by your brokenness. That your brokenness will not be that which defines you, but that you will understand yourself as so much more. That's why we're calling this series Broken And. Because we are broken and yet so much more than just simply our brokenness. I'll leave you with another nugget from our discussions of the mirrors. When we were talking about mirrors, and again, I think the initial concept was maybe that we were going to have big mirrors hanging all around, not little shards, but the question was raised. It was like, how are we going to do that? I mean, we're going to put mirrors up? We got all these bright lights that shine in this direction. Aren't they just going to reflect and hit people in the face with light? Isn't it going to shine? And, aren't we going to reflect light in people's faces? And I wasn't very pastoral in my response. I was like, yes. Exactly. That's entirely the point. You see, because even though these pieces of mirror are broken, they still reflect and shine the light. And even though you and I are broken, to our very core, we're broken, we still have the ability to shine God's light. Jesus Christ, as the light of the world, came to live and to die, to be broken, and still to shine. And in the midst of all of your brokenness, all the broken promises, all the failures and shortcomings, you have the ability to shine God's light. And I pray it be so. Amen.